ecosystem. The term ecosystem indicates the eco meaning the environment and the system meaning an interacting interdepartment complex. So the ecosystem that means was the first proposed by the AG Tonsley in 1935, whose defined is as a system of resulting from the investigation of all living on and non-living factor on of the environment. So the term ecosystem indicate eco meaning environment, health facts, and system meaning an interacting interdepartmental complex. So the term is basically we study as a ecosystem on the purpose of ecosystem we can study because our knowledge gaining and the environmental problem and their interacting complex. Structure of an ecosystem. The structure of an ecosystem is basically a description of organism and physical feature of environment, including the amount and distribution of nutrient in a particular habitat. The structure of an ecosystem is basically a description of organism and physical feature of environment. The structure of ecosystem is basically description of organism and physical feature of environment, including the amount and description of nutrient in the particular habitat. It also provides the information regarding the range of climate and condition and prevailing area in the form. From the structural point of view, all ecosystem consist of two main components. From the structural point of view, all ecosystem consist of two main components. All the from the structural point of view, all ecosystem consist of two main components: abiotic component and biotic component. Uh, Abiotic component, that is physical factor, inorganic substance, organic substance, and biotic component, that means producer, consumer, and decomposer. Again explain physical factors: temperature, humidity, light, atmospheric pressure, and however inorganic substance: water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, etc. And organic substance included protein, carbohydrate, lipid, etc. And biotic component: producer, consumer, and decomposer. So producer is basically green plant, consumer is basically animals, and decomposer basically microorganism. Here is the structure of the ecosystem with the different component. Again and again study the ecosystem And the structure of ecosystem is basically description of physical feature, environmental the structure of an ecosystem is basically organism and physical feature of environment, including the amount and dis- distribution of nutrient in a particular habitat. It also provides information regarding the range of climate conditions prevailing the area. From the structural viewpoint, all the ecosystem consists of main two: number one physical properties and number one abiotic component and number two biotic component. The component of ecosystem are the divided into two groups: abiotic component and biotic component. Abiotic component is further divided into three categories. Abiotic component is further divided into three categories: number one physical factors, inorganic substance and organic substance. And biotic component further divided into three categories: biotic component, that means producer, basically plants, and consumer, basically living organism, for example animals, and the decomposer, that means microorganism. And on the other hand, abiotic factor, physical factors: temperature, humidity, light, atmospheric pressure. Temperature, atmospheric pressure, humidity, and light. And the inorganic substance, that means water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen. And organic substance, basically protein, carbohydrate, and lipid. So here is the structural point of view of ecosystem. Energy exchange in ecosystem. How to exchange in energy in the ecosystem? There are possible pathway for regarding energy to take once it before the release of organism. For example, there is a path. Number one, radiant energy may be reflected from the surface. Radiant energy may be reflected from the surface and it may be absorbed by the surface, and it may be transmitted through the surface. So energy is exchanged by the three pathway, possible pathway. Radiant energy may be reflected from the surface and it may be absorbed by the surface and it is transmitted through the surface. Energy that is reflected from the surface is the number of thermal benefit and of an organism. Energy that is reflected from the surface is one of the number of thermal benefit from an organism. Transmitted energy of number value to the animal, and the plant leaves however transmitted solar energy. Absorbed energy becomes a part of thermal and physiological regime of an organism, and the quality and the distribution of absorbed radiant energy is instead of physiologist and the ecologist. Energy is transferred between the environment and the organism by the radiation, convection, conduction. eh? Abiotic component The abiotic components of the ecosystem are conventionally divided into three parts. Number one, the climate of regime and physical factors like temperature, relative humidity, etc. Inorganic substances such as water, carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, etc., which are involve the cycling of maintaining the ecosystem. Number three, organic substance like protein, carbohydrate, lipid, humic substance, etc., which is largely from the living body and link the abiotic and biotic component. Biotic component, the living organism including plant, animal and microorganism, for example bacteria and fungi that are present in ecosystem from the biotic component. The biotic component of ecosystem both on live on and interact with the abiotic component. On the basis of their role of ecosystem, biotic component on their basis of role of the ecosystem, the biotic component can be classified into three main groups. Number one, producer, energy transducer, consumer and decomposer. Producer. Producer are energy transducers. Producer are living organisms in the ecosystem which are converted the solar energy into the chemical energy. So which is converted the solar energy into the chemical energy. Uh, uh, Producer basically the living organism which is converted the solar energy into the chemical energy with the help of inorganic substance like water, carbon dioxide and organic substance like enzymes such as enzymes. And they are manufacturer their own food, so they are known as a autocrat. Basically they are manufacture their own foods basically they are manufacture their own foods, so they are known as a autocrat. Auto, that means self, and crop means feeder. So autocrop, that means the self feeder. For example, largely clean plant grasses, tiny phytoplankton, etc. Okay, number three, producer from the base of the food oil. Producer from the base of food oil, and the generally largest group in the ecosystem. Point of biomass. These also act as an interface with the biotic component of the ecosystem during the nutrient cycling and the incorporate inorganic carbon and nitrogen from the atmosphere. The chemical energy stored by the producer is utilized partly by the producer for their own growth and survival, and the remaining storage planned for the future uses. So again, for the device, the producer are living organism that which is ecosystem. Producer are living organism in the ecosystem which is convert the solar energy into the chemical energy with the help of inorganic substances such as water organic water, carbon dioxide and organic substance like as such as enzyme. That basically they are manufacture their own foods, so that they are known as auto, that means self, and trop, that means feeder. For example, largely green plant and thin grasses and tiny microplankton, etc. Producer are base of the food oil. Again, we know that producer are base of the food oil, and generally the large group of in the ecosystem by oil. They also act as an interface with abiotic component of the ecosystem during the nutrient cycle, as they are incorporate inorganic carbon and nitrogen from the atmosphere. The chemical change, the chemical energy stored to the producer is utilized there partly, and some part of the producer for their growth and survival, and the remaining is stored in their plants and on their future uses. Number two, consumer. Consumer are basically heterotrophic. Hetero that means other, and trophic that means not neuroscience. Organism in the ecosystem that get their energy from their consuming other organisms. Consumer are heterotrophic because they are not manufacture their own food. So organism and this type of organism is depend on the producer. Organism in the organism in the ecosystem, that is, so this type of organism that they get energy from their other organism. Consumer can only harvest. Consumer can only harvest about 10% of the energy content in the what they are eat. So they are trained to be less biomass of each stage as you move of the upper food chain. Consumer may be of the fourth type of depending on their food habit, namely primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary and quaternary consumer. Primary consumer, the first order consumer, or some herbivorous. These are animals which is feed on plants or producer. Example: zooplankton, rabbit, deer, goats, cattle, etc. Secondary consumer, that means secondary order consumer or primary carnivore. These types of animals which is feed on the herbivorous are called the primary carnivores. For example, cats, foxes, snakes, etc. Tertiary consumer, that means third order consumer. These types of organism a large of carnivores which is feed on the secondary consumer. For example, wolves, quaternary consumer or fourth order consumer or omnivorous. That means herbivorous. That means plant consume for it, and primary carnivorous. That means plant or primary consumer can produce for it, and the tertiary consumer. That means and the fourth or omnivorous. Omnivorous, that means a large large consumer of the food oil. These types, these are largest carnivores which is feed the tertiary consumer. For example, lions and tigers, and man, also man, because of man or animals. So because of human can consume any types of consumer, producer, etc. That was decomposer or reducer. Reducer also heterotrophic organism that is depend on the organic matter and dead organism. Decomposer are also heterotrophic organisms that depend upon the organic matter and dead organism for their food. For example, decomposer are simply microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, actinomyces, etc. Beside Arthur. Uh, Encyclopedia worms are also included, that is decomposer organism as their organic matter for their food. They perform a vital recycling function, break down complex organic matter like cellulose, hemicellulose, chitin, etc. Returning nutrient from the soil, whereas the plant can take them again. In this process, the also harvest the last of the sunlight and energy initially absorbed by the producer. Decomposer represent the final step of in the circular ecosystem process. Primary production: the green plant and photosynthetic and chemiosynthetic bacteria synthesize their inorganic material and directly trap the light energy from the sun, and their biomass increase. The rate of energy stored is known as primary production. Secondary production, the other organisms like plants, pests, fungi, bacteria, and animals do not have the power fixed the solar energy, and they get the energy from the metabolic activities to the core. The rate of energy stored at the consumer level is known as the secondary production. Energy flow. Energy flow. In the ecology, energy flow refers to the flow of energy through the food chain out of crop, primary consumer, secondary, tertiary, and decomposer. And there is the basically this the of ecology is the food chain. The biotic component of the ecosystem, for example, the plant and animals are interdependent on each other for their national requirement. For example, producer from the food for the herbivorous, and which is turned from the food from the carnivorous, and the transfer of energy and nutrient from one feeding of group of organism to the another is series is called food chain. The biotic component of ecosystem, for example, plants and animals, are independent on the each others for their natural nutritional requirement. For example, producer from the food oil for herbivorous, which is starts from the carnivorous, food for carnivorous. The transfer of energy and nutrient from one feeding of a group of organisms to another, a series is called food chain. It is a sequence of দুইটাই বানাবো কেন? দ্রুত জয়েন করুন। একজন চলে আসছে, এই যে দুইজন চলে আসছে, তিনজন চলে আসছে। তাড়াতাড়ি লাইভটা শেয়ার করুন দ্রুত। সিটকম, সিটকম মাত্র আমাদের অল্প সিট রয়েছে। আজকের লাইভটি দ্রুত শেয়ার করুন এবং জিতে নিন। কোনো ভিডিও কোনো রেশিও আছে এই এই এর উপর আর ভিউজ হওয়া সম্ভব না? কোনো রেশিও নাই। ইনফিনিটি ভিউ হতে পারে একটা ভিডিওতে, ইনফিনিটি ভিউ। না না, কোনো রেশিও নাই। ইনফিনিটির মানুষ জয়েন করতে পারে একটা লাইভে। দিস ইজ নট কাউন্টেবল, ইটস আনকাউন্টেবল নাও। গট ইট? Significance of food chain. The study of food chains helps to understand the feeding relationship and interaction between the organism in an ecosystem. They also help us to appreciate the energy flow mechanism and matter circulation in the ecosystem and understand the movement of toxic substance of the ecosystem. The study of food chain helps to understand and program the balance of the organism. Food web. A food web is made of the number of food chains involving the organism. It represent the different feeding relationship in an ecosystem or bioecology. It also defines the energy flow through the species of community in a usually more complicated or the other situation of biome. It is also define the energy flow through the species of community. It is also usually more complicated than a food chain because organism can get their energy in the food. Food webs are an indispensable part of ecosystem, and living organism can be responsible for a part of multiple food chains in a given ecosystem. It is also reflected that কে জানি আসছে রে, কোন গরিব এই লাইভে চলে আইলো আল্লাহ জানে। হ্যালো, কেমন আছেন? চিফ এক্সিকিউটিভ জেলা পরিষদ, কি খবর পোলাপান? লাইভে চলে এসেছিলেন? আরে, it is also refers to then consumer ecosystem. কে তুমি কে? Who is one? আমি কে? আমি নাম আছে তো। Who are you? Yes, who are you? Please comment your name or uh, mention any sign that I can know you. কি খবর পোলাপান, ভালো আছেন? ওরে নাসিম, শাবাশ। Who are you man? What happened? তোমাদের দিনকাল কেমন যায়? ভালো আছে সবাই? আমি তো ভালো নেই। এই যে দেখো আমার পড়াশোনা, কষ্ট করে পড়াশোনা করতেছি বুঝছো, আর এই লাইভ করতেছি পাগলের মতো। শোনো আমার পড়াশোনা স্টাইল দেখো। আমি এখন পড়তেছি ফুড ওয়েব, মানে খাদ্য শৃঙ্খল। A food web is made up of a number of food chain. একটি ফুড ওয়েব অনেকগুলো ফুড চেনের